This game is unforgiving, man. That could easily be me right now, and it's what we do. I am the least fake person in this sport. I take everything personal. I took everything he said personal, and I'm glad I put him to sleep.
Well, listen, let's take a look at that punch that you landed and talk us through it a little bit. Was there something that you saw on tape leading up to this?
No, honestly, no. I prepare for a fight. I prepare for 25 minutes. Every single time I come in here, I don't expect nothing less from myself or from my opponent. I knew James was ready, and, it's hard to get hit when you're trying to move backwards. That's why I meet punches, force with force. You can talk all the crap you want about me, but I see punches, I take them on the forehead, and I'm not going to take them going backwards. So, who's next?
What's going on, everybody? Welcome to episode 41 of Combat Docket Radio. Kurt and Ben here, as always, to bring you everything going on in the MMA world. What's up this week, Ben?
Not a lot, as usual. Happy to be here, ready to talk about some MMA, some face punching.
Yeah, man. Finally, UFC was back this past weekend. UFC Lincoln happened. Again, there's always a lot of MMA going on, but it's always better when the UFC is happening as well. Bellator, PFL, great promotions, along with all the regional action, which you could always follow by syncing the Combat Docket calendar. But yeah, man, when the UFC is around, it's always better. And UFC Lincoln was a really freaking good card. Another one of those sleeper cards. Like, aside from the main event, there wasn't any too many blockbuster names, but man, it delivered.
Agreed. And the main event was what made it kind of a must watch. Like Justin Gaethje, I feel like is appointment television. Like you have to see that. But kind of like what we talked about last week, there was a lot of action fights and they delivered. I'm looking right now. What was there? There was only 1, 2, 4 decisions on the whole card. So a lot of finishes. And like I said, you know that you're tuning in just to see Justin Gaethje and James Vick. The rest is icing on the cake.
Yeah, agreed. And, of those decisions, and we're going to talk about a couple of them, but, Michael Johnson, Andre Fili, Courtney Casey, Angela Hill were both really good fights. So, yeah, you definitely got your, you got your fix. It was a great card. Let's start at the top. Justin Gaethje knocks out James Vick in just under 90 seconds. Definitely time to pump the brakes on Justin Gaethje is washed up. Justin Gaethje is done. Justin Gaethje is finished. Time to pump the brakes on that. I mean, where do you think Justin Gaethje is right now? Like, before he was this world beater destined for a title. He loses 2 fights again to 2 complete dogs, 2 of the top fighters in the division, and then everybody's like, all right, Justin Gaethje's done. He's got to change his style. He's not cut out for this. He's a B-leaguer, blah, 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 blah. Where do you see him after this fight? Where is he in the mix? He's still,
the fact that he lost to Alvarez and Poirier kind of by necessity puts him right out of the, he's several fights away, I think. Maybe at least 2, I think, away from a title shot because he lost to 2 guys that are right there at the top. But, the UFC, I don't think they've updated their rankings as we're recording this yet. And he was number 7 before this fight. Granted, he was fighting James Vick, who's ranked below him, but, a dominant fight. I hope, he's certainly in the top 5, top 6 in the UFC. And I hope they give him a guy ranked above him. Kevin Lee is a name that everybody kind of seemed to be talking about because it seems to be the fight that makes the most sense, because Kevin Lee is coming off of a win, right, and is ranked above him, and he's the only other guys ranked above Gaethje are Barboza coming off a loss, Alvarez and Poirier, who he lost to, and everybody else is tied up. So I think Gaethje is still there. Also, do you get the sense Gaethje really cares that much about who he fights next?
Yeah, I definitely don't think Gaethje gives a fuck who he fights next. I know he called out Tony Ferguson. That's not going to happen unless there's an injury to Anthony Pettis, and they give Gaethje a call, who probably, Gaethje said, I believe it was today or maybe on the MMA or Ariel's MMA show, that he wanted to take a break. But Gaethje strikes me as a dude, like he kind of said, he would fight anybody, anywhere. I'm sure if Pettis got hurt randomly, Gaethje would step in and fight Ferguson. But I don't really see that happening. Like you said, the Kevin Lee or Edson Barbosa make the most sense. Either one of those, hands down, make the most sense. But again, back to the first point, like I think we got to pump the brakes on writing Justin Gaethje off. He fought two dogs who again, Justin Gaethje was in both of those fights. He hurt Eddie Alvarez. He hurt Dustin Poirier. He was a couple leg kicks away from probably stopping Dustin Poirier. And then he knocks out James Vick in a fight that he needed. Not only he needed because it saved him from going on a 3-fight losing streak, but he also got out of there without taking any more brain damage. I mean, Justin Gaethje, throughout his career, is just like rock'em sock'em robots. I mean, he's been hurt by lesser fighters, and he's always come back. This is definitely a big one for him. And I honestly, like, for him and his health-wise, I would not mind seeing him take some time off. But Kevin Lee needs a fight. Barbosa needs a fight. So I don't know. I don't know when he's going to jump back in there, but that was a big win for him. And also he needed to get a win without taking too much damage, which none of us expected, but it was definitely good for him.
Yeah, I think you hit the nail on the head there, because all of us kind of assume like, oh, we only have Justin Gaethje for a few more fights. We only have him for a couple more years, because you assume that every fight he's in, he's going to get hit a lot and take a ton of damage. So it's great just from a fan perspective to see him not only get the win, but to get the win just in under 2 minutes, basically taking no damage. Just fucking great. That means we get more Justin Gaethje in our lives for a little bit longer, I think. And can we give credit to just fucking Justin Gaethje's attitude? Like him getting on the mic and just being so honest, where he's like, yeah, I respect James Vick as a competitor. And he like shook his hand and everything afterward. But he was also like, yeah, it felt good to knock him out. I didn't like the stuff he was saying to me. I took it personal. So often I feel like fighters, because they're human beings, necessarily put up like a shield when they talk to thousands of people. Here's Justin Gaethje minutes after this epic main event knockout, and he's fucking just speaking pure truth, where he's like, yeah, I was offended by the things he said to me, and it felt good to knock him on his ass. I don't know. I thought it was awesome.
Yeah, complete savagery. He hit the nail on the head there with the, his whole, there was a couple quotes from it that were just beautiful. Yeah, and just him saying that he loved knocking James Vick, what do you say, like out cold or unconscious, as James Vick was just standing there, was complete savagery. Crazy, man.
We should also give ourselves pats on the back. We both picked Justin Gaethje. We both said he'd be able to get inside Vick's range. Neither of us thought it was going to happen quite that quick, but for once, we both picked a Justin Gaethje fight correctly.
Absolutely. I mean, I'm a Justin Gaethje fan. I don't think there's one fight I would pick. I don't know. Actually, honestly, did I pick Alvarez over Gaethje? Because I'm a big Eddie Alvarez fan. Usually, like I'm ride or die with my guys. Like Nate Diaz. We're gonna talk about this way later on, but I'm picking Nate Diaz over Dustin Poirier. I don't know. I'm a big Diaz fan. I'm always gonna pick them. But like Gaethje, I find myself like, even if it's a bad matchup for him, like I'm always gonna pick Gaethje. But I felt like, we talked about it last week, I felt like this was a good matchup for Gaethje, and he proved us both right. Again, neither of us thought it was going to be that easy and that quick. But yeah, pat ourselves on the back for that one.
Yeah, I enjoyed watching it. Where do you think Vick goes from here?
Real quick, though, before we get on to Vick, man. I'm all for the Kevin Lee fight, but I honestly think I would rather see Gaethje versus Barbosa. Again, I kind of talked about how it was great for Gaethje to get out of there without taking any brain damage, but like a fight with Barbosa would be absolute mayhem, because those are two of the toughest motherfuckers on the planet. Those dudes you have to knock those dudes unconscious to make them stop. Two of the best leg kickers in the game. Man, I would love to see that fight. I know Barbosa's coming off the loss, and he's coming off a loss to Kevin Lee where he got the crap beaten out of him. But again, he never stopped coming. He was in it from bell to bell. That's the fight I want to see. As far as Vick, man, that's a tough one for Vick because Vick, he talked about it a lot. He was on this big win streak. Had a lot of fights in the UFC with a lot of wins, and he just never got that big step up. And this step up fell in his lap, and he got knocked out in under 90 seconds. He was ranked 10. I don't know where he goes from here, man. Maybe run back that Paul Felder fight. Paul Felder's coming off a loss. Paul Felder's, I don't even know if Paul Felder's ranked. I don't have the rankings pulled up right now, but maybe for that Paul Felder fight, that makes sense probably for both guys.
Yeah, I was gonna say Felder as well. I think it makes the most sense because that was originally scheduled, but I think he's back to fighting guys outside the top 15, unless maybe, I guess Michael Chiesa is coming off a loss, but that's about it, And I think he's now had kind of 2 shots at the upper echelon and been like just terribly knocked out against Beneil Dariush the first time he had a huge step up in competition, and now a huge step up against Gaethje. And he didn't make any adjustment. Like we talked about it, that he was talking like he was going to stick and move. And he was landing some kicks to the body and punches to the body at range. And I mean, it's a short fight. There's not a ton you can take from it, but he was not like pumping his jab. He wasn't using straight kicks to maintain a distance. Yeah, he was landing on Gaethje, but he was doing nothing to maintain the distance. You know what I mean? Like other than throw when he was throwing when he had time, but he was doing nothing to like make sure Gaethje couldn't move in on him. So it was kind of, if you're a James Vick fan, I feel like that's a disappointment because he didn't, it was like he didn't know who he was fighting. You know what I mean? He didn't do anything to actually maintain a long range.
That chin is always up, and he backs on a straight line up. Yeah. I mean, that's been kind of like the knock on him for a while, even though he's been winning. And Gaethje exploited it. Definitely. Yeah. Tough one for Vick. I kind of feel bad for him, and I agree with him. Like, I know he put out the statement afterwards that he was just trying to sell the fight. I agree with him. I don't think he had any ill will towards Gaethje. He was just trying to sell the fight, and it worked. But it also worked to piss Gaethje off, and Gaethje made him pay for it. Yeah, maybe Chiesa, Felder, someone in that range. But yeah, I mean, again, that lightweight division is an absolute shark tank. Gaethje's got a big name, got a big win, and Gaethje's still a couple fights away. Maybe your boy Dan Hooker. Well, Dan Hooker's probably going to be ready to fight before Vick's ready, but Dan Hooker's a shark that's ranked. Dan Hooker's what, like 15th, 14th? Yeah, that guy's a savage.
14. He's got, like, I was pulling for Dan Hooker to fight Anthony Pettis. Like, I think he's fucking ready for that level of fighter.
Man, that's a tough fight for Vick to jump into, coming off a loss. But Dan Hooker's a guy that's right there. He's another guy that's probably about ready to take a big step up, and Vick would be a step up. So we'll see, man. Co-main event, Michael Johnson eked out a really close decision against Andre Fili. Did you score that fight for Johnson, or did you have it for Fili?
I haven't rewatched it, and watching it live. Actually, watching it live, I wasn't paying a super close attention because I was fucking tired and I just wanted to get to Justin Gaethje. But watching it live, I did think Michael Johnson had won. But yeah, super close fight. I thought in the second round, I think it was the second round, right? Michael Johnson got taken down again, and he had his back taken, and Andre Fili got so close on the choke. Like, what is the deal with Michael Johnson giving up he's a veteran, and I feel like he just gives up his back like nobody's business.
Yeah, I had my brothers over for that fight, and one of my brothers knows nothing about MMA, like no interest, nothing about it. And I was like, yeah, dude, this fight's done. We could play cards again. We could do whatever. No, it's done. I did not expect Michael Johnson to get out of that. And yeah, I agree. I mean, gives up his back a lot, and he mostly pays for it. And to his credit, he fought out of it. which I really did not expect. Yeah, I don't know, man. He is definitely a vet. He trains with savages out there at Combat Club in Florida. Top level grapplers, Gilbert Burns, a bunch of them. Yeah, I don't know, man. But when he's on the feet, man, he is super slick. Uses his range really well. Fires that left hand. He's great from the southpaw stance. Yeah, big win for him, I guess. First win at 45. Again, this was kind of that fight where, like, didn't mean all that much rankings-wise, but it was a fun fight. I thought they got the decision right. I thought it could have went either way, honestly, but big win for Johnson.
Yeah, I think he looked a little bit better physically. I think he's more adjusted to the weight cut. In his first fight against Darren Elkins, I just thought he looked like an alien, like super fucking skinny. He's still skinny at 45, but I don't know. He looks like he's filled out, if that makes any sense, even though he's dropping a weight class. It looks like he's fully adjusted to the weight class. And yeah, I mean, his hand speed is a handful for anybody at 145. He's so fast on the feet and obviously hits hard. You know, kind of back to the drawing board for Andre Fili, who I feel like had gained a little bit of momentum. I don't know. I think this is kind of, we've seen Andre Fili's ceiling. And we talked about it last week, how people really expected big things out of him, but I think this is it, man. I think maybe he can kind of rebuild his career. He's huge. Maybe Andre Fili can go up to 55 and find more success there, but we just got done talking about how that's such a shark tank there.
Yeah. It won't, the thing with Johnson, I didn't realize this. And even I looked at his record last week and it didn't really hit me. And I saw a post about it today. This was Johnson's first win in almost 2 years. You know who his last win was almost 2 years ago? Dustin Poirier. Arguably the biggest win of his career when he knocked out Dustin Poirier. And he hasn't won since.
Man.
Craziness. Yeah, I agree about Fili. He's alternated wins and losses his whole career. Fun fighter, puts on fun fights. I think that's probably where he's going to be for the rest of his career. I don't know if he's going to break the top 15, top 10. Got a great team around him, but maybe it's time to switch things up. I don't know.
I mean, whatever. Like, the UFC can use a fun action fighter at 145 or 155 or whatever. He can be the Chris Lytle. You know what I mean? Like, let him have a good, fun career in the UFC.
Hey, Chris Lytle, though, got to win at bare knuckle boxing.
Oh yeah, that's true. That's
a little off subject, but have you watched any of those bare knuckle boxing events?
No, I mean, other than some highlights here and there, which
same.
I don't want to get too far off topic, but people have raised a point like it's bloody as hell, and the idea of watching bare knuckles is kind of gruesome for some people, but you're basically trading. You're going to hurt your hands, but cause less brain damage. You know what I mean? Like, if you can understand the idea that it's actually safer for your brain. I mean, it's harder to watch because you're going to have more cuts, but it's safer for your brain. Like, I got no problem with it. I think the public at large is probably going to struggle to accept bare knuckle boxing, but I think it serves a purpose in the combat sports space.
Yeah, man, I agree. I haven't watched it fully. I've watched highlights of you, but I know Chris Lytle won. I was always a big Chris Lytle fan. Beck Rollins won, I believe, in the main event. I know Joey Beltran fought. I don't know if he won or lost, but it looks fun for sure. But yeah, I haven't watched any of it. Maybe next time it's around, I'll catch it.
Yeah, maybe.
All right, let's stare back to the main card. Courtney Casey beat Angela Hill by split decision. Third fight in a row for Courtney Casey where it's been a nail biter. This time she got the nod. I got to say, man, win, lose, or draw, Angela Hill puts on some really, really just awesome fights. I talked about it a little bit last week. Her last fight against Nina Ansaroff was phenomenal. I thought this fight with Courtney Casey was really fun. And Courtney Casey surprised me a lot. I mean, she stood toe-to-toe with Angela Hill. I thought she tried to implement like a grapple heavy game to try to nullify Angela Hill's striking, but that was not the case. She stood toe-to-toe with Angela Hill. I mean, those ladies were firing back and forth. Man, that was a really good fight. Yeah, awesome fight, man.
Yeah, I actually disagreed with the decision, but I think same as the co-main event, it could have gone either way. I don't think it was a robbery either way. I think stats wise, Angela Hill outlanded Casey, but I did feel like Courtney Casey was landing a little bit more meaningful shots. Yeah, fun fight, and I think Angela Hill is kind of in that Andre Fili category now, where we expected a ton out of her, but I think we're kind of seeing her ceiling, and she's really just going to kind of be in fun, exciting fights. Part of why it's exciting is because she's a kickboxer, really active, high output kickboxer, and sometimes she doesn't have the best defense, so she's going to get hit. But yeah, fun fight. I got no complaints about that. And it was like, that was a decision after 3 straight finishes. I don't know. It was a fun card to watch overall, and I feel like sometimes those decisions mixed in with the finishes help the viewer to digest the card, if that makes any sense.
Yeah, I agree. And I agree with you also that I had it scored for Angela Hill. Again, narrow margin. Can't really argue either way. But yeah, fun fight. Again, both ladies were right outside the top 10. Yeah, I don't know where either of them go from here. Probably not too far up, but fun fight regardless. Definitely kept the ball rolling. Again, those two, the co-main event and this fight, split decisions, both really interesting, intriguing fights. And again, man, I'm really high on Angela Hill's last 2 fights. I thought they were super fun. So yeah, definitely excited to see her and Courtney Casey back. Moving down, Brian Barberena knocked out the hometown hero Jake Ellenberger. And Jake Ellenberger retired after. We talked about it a bit last week. A smart decision for him. He didn't get the win like he had hoped, and I'm sure many of us had hoped, but he knew when to call it quits. He left the gloves in the octagon. What a great career, man. I know he went like 2-8 in his last 10, which is the drop off was for Jake, but at the height of his career, man, that guy was a killer. One of the best in the world at the time, was on the verge of a title shot. Never quite got to it, but he's got some big wins in his career. Props to him on a great career, man.
Yeah, and you know what I liked that I can't remember who it was on the commentary team. Maybe it was Paul Felder that raised the point that Jake Ellenberger, even throughout his losing stretches, was trying to get better, and he was moving around to different camps, and he like, you know what I mean? Like, he was always a guy that believed in himself and believed that he could get back to that upper echelon of welterweight. And it seemed like, a lot of people respected him. It was a good emotional scene. But also, I will say about the fight, like, watching it, I'm glad that he's retiring, because he clearly does not react well to damage at all. Brian Barberena has a bunch of knockouts, but he's not like a one-hitter quitter type. And, the punches that dropped Ellenberger didn't even look flush. And then Ellenberger, once he got on the ground, just kind of shelled up. It's, I think he kind of knew that he was going to retire that night if he lost, and maybe those doubts creeped into his mind. But I'm glad he's retiring, and they did him well on the broadcast, gave him plenty of time to talk and all that.
Yeah, man. And look, I'm going to list off some of the names, just win or lose on his record. But Jay Heron, Pele, Pat Healy, Rick Story, Carlos Condit, Mike Pyle, Jake Shields, Diego Sanchez, Martin Kampman, Nate Marquardt, Rory McDonald, Robbie Lawler, Kelvin Gastelum, Josh Koscheck, Stephen Thompson, Tarek Safadine, Matt Brown, Jorge Masvidal, Mike Perry, Ben Saunders. I mean, he's fought some absolute studs in his career. And again, at his height, he was right on the verge of a title shot. He was one of the best in the world.
The fact that you said Pele gives you an idea of how long and storied his career was.
Yeah, I mean, he retires with a record of 31-15. His first fight was in 2005, back in Omaha, Nebraska, and it kind of came full circle for him. Again, you wish he kind of got the win. They kind of gave him, I don't want to say Brian Barberena is a gimme by any means, but Brian Barberena is not a world beater. He's a mid-level fighter that, they gave Jake Ellenberger as kind of like, win. You probably, I don't know. You should win, but if you don't, I don't know, man. And it's funny because Brian Barberena actually beat Jake Ellenberger's brother, Joe, in the UFC back in 2014. So Brian actually has 2 wins over the Ellenbergers. And props to Barberena. I mean, I guess that's a resume win for him. Jake Ellenberger moves him along, but yeah.
Yeah, I mean,
props on
it
the
doesn't mean
career
a ton right now, but yeah.
No, but props on the career for Ellenberger. And from everything I've heard, he seems like one of like the good guys of the sport. So, we wish him luck in his next endeavor. Moving down on the card, Davison Figueiredo stopped John Moraga in the second round. Man, Figueiredo is a player at 125. This was a big step up for him. And we talked about it last week, how we were both pretty high on Figueiredo. And again, kind of like late career Moraga was on a roll. And, dude, Figueiredo tore through him. Looked excellent. He's fresh blood at flyweight. He's a guy that's what, one fight away from. He's like a Joseph Benavidez away from a title shot. You got to think he fights a guy like, I know Sergio Pettis has a fight coming up. I believe Benavidez does too. But if he beats a guy like Pettis or Benavidez, and I believe he's right there with both of them, he is going to get a title shot. And again, he's flesh blood for obviously Cejudo, who just won the title, or even DJ if he does win the title back. Man, I was so impressed by him.
Yeah, Moraga was number 6. They haven't put out the new rankings, but if John Moraga would have won this fight, then he'd be fighting a Benavidez or Pettis type. You know what I mean? But yeah, I thought Moraga was going to win because in my mind and from what I had seen, I thought Figueiredo was a bit of a wild man, and I thought Moraga would just kind of out technique him. But dude, Davison Figueiredo is like a fucking physical specimen at flyweight. When he got on top of John Moraga, and Moraga is not a bad grappler by any means. I know his bottom game is not his go-to, but Figueiredo's top pressure was just incredible, and you could tell he was just so much stronger than Moraga. And then obviously his punching power, dropping Moraga with a body shot. I agree. He's absolutely a player, and not one that I really expected. I thought watching Figueiredo's previous fights, I just kind of thought, all right, he's a decent athlete who's kind of wild and just a hyper aggressive kind of Brazilian style. But the way he kind of ran through Moraga, who had been looking really good, he changed my opinion on him a little bit. He's a great athlete. I think he's like a really just strong, super powerful guy, and he's clearly learning to kind of harness that a little bit better.
I'm with you, man. I thought he lost that decision to Jared Brooks, and then he beat Joseph Morales, who is not on the level of John Moraga. And then to come in there and absolutely, honestly, mop the floor with John Moraga. John Moraga didn't really have many moments in that fight. That's an exciting new player at flyweight, a division that needs that. You got to think Figueiredo is going to fight either. Who is Benavidez fighting? Do you know off the top of your head?
Let me look.
And who is Pettis fighting? Because I believe both of them are locked up right now, aren't they?
They might be fighting each other.
No, because I believe, didn't they just fight?
Yeah, you're right. Sorry. Maybe they're not locked up.
Quick.
Benavidez, at least
Sergio.
at one point, was scheduled to fight Ray Borg. I think that fight is still on. I don't know if Pettis has a fight right now.
Yes, that fight is definitely still
I don't know
on.
if Pettis has a fight right now.
Yeah, I think definitely Figueiredo is going to fight or needs to fight either Pettis or Benavidez or Ray Borg even. One of those, because those are all in the mix at the top of that division, and Figueiredo definitely put himself in that realm.
Pettis is scheduled to fight Jussier Formiga. So,
okay, all right.
so those guys are locked up, but I'm with you. And he could fight, Dustin Ortiz is on a little bit of a run here, but I'm with you that like the dude just ran through the number 6 flyweight in the world. I would love to see him have a huge step up in competition because he definitely looks ready.
Honestly, man, I like Dustin Ortiz. I think he's a great fighter, but I think Dustin Ortiz is almost like not a backstep, but like I don't think he's going up the ladder fighting Dustin Ortiz. I think he's got to step up to that like Sergio Pettis, Benavidez, Borg level, and I think he's ready for it.
Agreed. I think
mopping the mat with John.
Yeah. I think Ortiz, who's on a little run of zone, I think Ortiz would be a step down in competition, legit, from John Moraga. So
exactly, and he just mopped the mat with John Moraga. Yeah, definite player, undefeated, 15-0. Yeah, any of those guys, the winner of, because you got to think Mighty Mouse is getting that immediate rematch. He deserves it more than anybody. So yeah, either the Pettis winner or Benavidez. Yeah, or I guess we can't count out Formiga. Any of those 4, the winner of that fight, I'm down for Figueiredo to fight.
Absolutely.
Close main card. Eric Anders beat Tim Williams with a Shogun soccer kick at the end of the 3rd rounds. A lot of hype on Anders, and Anders, I think he was winning that fight, but barely. And I think a lot of us expected a lot more from Anders.
Barely.
But that knockout kind of wiped it all away because that knockout was absolutely brutal, phenomenal savagery. Kind of made me forget the mediocre performance he turned in until then. It was weird. Like I believe he knocked down Tim Williams before that, right? And he like called him up, and Tim Williams kind of like sat on the ground, and then he called him up again. And as he was standing up, he just unleashed this like borderline soccer kick that just stiffened Tim Williams up like a board. He had the walk-off KO. Pure savage beauty by Eric Anders at the end of that fight.
Yeah, that was like a fucking field goal. He like field goal kicked Tim Williams' head. Like as he was standing up, just a straight up and down field goal kick, just punted his head. And I was getting ready, like I watched it and I was like, holy shit. And then I was getting ready to type out a tweet about like practice your technical stand-up, kids. But then they showed the replay and Tim Williams did like a proper technical stand-up as people learn in like basic jiu-jitsu class or even just like fucking self-defense class. You learn how to stand up the way he did, but it's like, well, apparently if the guy's good, he's just going to walk right up to your face and kick it to the fucking stratosphere.
And it was completely legal too. I mean, he had all points off of the mat. Yeah, perfect kick. He kicked Tim Williams' head into the 3rd row. He could definitely try out for the NFL to be a kicker after that one. And again, like if that went to decision, that would have been a win for Eric Anders, but like a meh win. That knockout just completely salvaged that victory for him. 100%.
Yeah. And then he got on the mic and called out Elias Theodorou, who is currently booked. It was kind of it was a off night for Eric Anders outside of the just wild head kick knockout.
I didn't even listen to his post fight. He called out Elias Theodorou, huh?
Yeah. And then, Elias Theodorou was like, this is the 2nd time you've called me out and I currently have a fight booked. So, whatever.
Listen, at least Elias Theodorou answers call outs to other people besides me. I've been calling out Elias Theodorou constantly about a hair battle because I believe that I am the real main event, MANE event. I have the best hair in combat sports. We're going to tweet this to Elias after because I believe our debut with video on YouTube should be with Elias Theodorou. So we got to get him on here. I'm going to keep calling him out until he does it.
I'll try to. I think I might see him at Invicta this weekend. I'll try to. I think he's doing the ring boy thing again. It might be too close to his fight, but I'm not sure. But if he is, I'll try to catch him.
He does a great job at that.
Oh yeah,
and he has a great mane. But man, Non-biased, I favor mine. So yes, please ask him.
Absolutely.
All right, so let's wrap this card up. James Krause got a big win over Warley Alves. James Krause, man, WEC vet, has quietly put together a 5-fight win streak. I like watching Krause fight. He's a good fighter. A slick stand-up, slick ground game. The sport to see him win, man. 5 wins in a row.
Yeah, and he looked good at 170. He said that's where he wants to stay. So.
Oh no shit! I didn't know he was trying to stay at welterweight. Okay.
Yeah, he
Makes
just likes
sense
not cutting weight, basically.
Best fight in the card, in my opinion, was Corey Sandgren defeating Yuri Alcantara. I mean, where do you start with this fight? Alcantara had Corey in he had him in like a triangle armbar where, I mean, I was watching with like my hands through you do that where you like put your hands over your eyes and like you peek through both of your fingers. I'm not a guy. I don't like watching like breaks. I don't like when you post like the graphic videos online of jiu-jitsu breaks. I don't watch them. I don't like watching them. And I thought Sandgren's arm was going to break. I mean, that was in some nasty places. And he was in a triangle. Like Alcantara could have easily switched that to a triangle. And somehow he got out of it and went on to beat the ever-living shit out of Yuri Alcantara. And for whatever reason, that ref did not want to stop that fight. And actually, I believe that was the last fight he ref the whole night. I think they pulled him from the rest of those fights. And for good reason. I mean, I don't know what he had against Yuri Alcantara, but boy, he did not want to stop that fight.
He was letting him be a warrior, man. Just letting him be a warrior.
He came from the Mario Yamasaki school of
thought. I was gonna say for people that don't know, that was in reference to Mario Yamasaki letting Valentina Shevchenko just murder a woman. And
so I've heard a lot of people say that this stoppage was worse than the Valentina stoppage. Do you agree with that?
I mean, for my own mental health, I have not rewatched the Valentina Shevchenko fight recently, but I will in preparation for next week's card, or the card 2 weeks from now, rather. Man, this one was fresh in my mind. So it seemed like it went on for longer, like the sustained beatdown, but I could be wrong. I think the Shevchenko one was harder to watch because you knew that Shevchenko just right from the jump was like the way better fighter. So you kind of felt like the refs,
Agreed.
The ref should have been kind of on a trigger there with the stoppage, knowing the mismatch. But this one was a little bit closer. But holy fuck, man, that the ref took some years off of Alcantara's life.
Yeah, that was crazy. I mean, the whole fight fucking crazy madness. Did they win? Did they win the $50,000 for fight of the night? At least did they give Alcantara that for the 50,000 brain cells he lost?
Yeah,
Jesus.
Fight of the night.
Yes.
That was fight of the night. Performance of the night was
Gaethje
and Eric Anders.
But man, and props to Sandgren, man. I mean, am I saying that right? Sandhagen. Why the fuck am I saying Sandgren? I don't know why. Is it Sandhagen? Sandhagen?
Sandhagen. I think
Sandhagen.
So.
Yeah, not Sandgren.
Sandhagen.
Yeah, we know who we're talking about.
We know who we're talking about. The guy with the fucking bendy arm that almost murdered a man on live television.
That is it. Props to both those dudes. I hope Alcantara can still walk after that fight. I hope he's not in like the ICU with brain damage. Anyways, Andrew Sanchez got one of the decisions on the card, beat Marcus Perez. Mickey Gall came back. Looked like a stud. I think he took 0 shots in that fight. Submitted George Sullivan with a rear naked choke in a minute. Mickey Gall is back. I knew he was on the MMA Hour last week, and he said he wants to stay active. So we'll see what they do with Mickey Gall. If they bump him up in competition or him at this level. So we'll see. I mean, he looked really good.
Yeah. Did he call out Sage Northcutt after the fight?
Sage Northcutt, Diego Sanchez, and I
Some
believe no, he called out Diego Sanchez. Yeah, he already beat Sage. He lost to Randy Brown. The Randy Brown one makes sense because he's lost to him. He already destroyed Sage. And come on, in 2018, you should not be calling out Diego, who is probably, hopefully, having his retirement fight coming up against Craig White. I don't even know when that fight is, but off the top of my head, yeah, that's his retirement fight. Randy Brown should have been his only call out, or somebody else. But yeah, for someone who claims that he has the best call outs and he invented, it was Mickey Gall that said he invented the call out, right? Yeah, this is a fucking
I
dud,
remember,
Mickey.
yeah.
Terrible. After an excellent win, your call out was fucking terrible.
It's like he just picked names that he could remember off the top of his head. He's like, "Oh fuck, I fought Sage Northcutt, didn't I? Let me like, you know what I mean? Like he didn't have a plan. He was like, think of 3 welterweights, and he's like, I remember watching Diego Sanchez on Tough, and I remember fighting Sage Northcutt.
Yeah, terrible,
You know what I mean?
terrible call outs. Come on, man. All right, Joanne Calderwood had a beautiful submission over Glenda Faria on the Fight Pass card. Man, I could listen to Joanne Calderwood. I like her winning because she gets to talk. Her accent is awesome.
Yeah.
She's fun to watch, fun to hear talk. I love her accent.
On that, did you hear not the in cage interview, but like her post fight media scrum when they're like, oh, yes. Joanne, I think it's John Morgan from MMA Junkie. Could be somebody else, but they're like, oh, I thought you were a striker, but apparently you're getting these submission wins. And she's like, all these bitches trying to take me down. She's just like fucking really soft spoken with that accent.
Bitches.
But yeah, you can tell she's like a killer. Like low key, she's a fucking killer. Like she probably like loved to beat the shit out of people, which is awesome.
But she seems like such a sweetheart. Yeah, I loved it. Drew Dober beat down John Tuck. Rani Yaha got a beautiful heel hook over Luke Sanders to open up the card. Again, UFC Lincoln definitely delivered. I had a lot of fun with that one. It's all these cards where they don't get a lot of hype. You know, the main event's stacked, but all these other filler fights just absolutely deliver. Great card.
Not only was it a fun card in terms of finishes, but there was like just enough weird moments. Like even the way Gaethje knocked out Vick and Vick fell face. Like anytime a tall guy gets knocked out like that, it's oddly funny to watch. Eric Anders punting. Yeah. Like there was a lot of kind of, I mean, we just got done talking about Mickey Gall's super weird call outs. Like there was some fun moments on kind of weird card, but overall good entertainment, good quality night of violence.
Agreed. So what do we got coming up this week? I believe PFL's back, right? This should be PFL week, Thursday.
Let me check the handy dandy calendar.
Yep.
I will
say, I'm on it, man. I'm on it.
Yeah. I'm not sure. Let me pull it up. I will say I know this weekend I'm covering Invicta, which I think for the weekend is the only major MMA.
So you're covering Invicta. Plug us in. Main event
and PFL is this Thursday. This actually should be a really, really good card. The main event is the strawweight title, Virna Jandiroba against Janessa Mirandin, a couple of Brazilians. The champion, Jandiroba, is an absolute, like if you are a fan of good, like super tight quality MMA grappling, she's one to watch. She's undefeated, really, really good. On the other side, Mirandin is just like a kind of a classical Brazilian brawler who will bring the fight. So kind of a grappler versus striker matchup. Definitely tune into that. It's on Fight Pass. Co-main event, Pearl Gonzalez looks to make it 3-0 in 2018. And she's at flyweight again.
Yeah, man, I've always enjoyed Invicta. I think the females really, really put it on the line. And again, those main event ladies are two females to watch. The winner could very well get signed to the UFC very soon. So that happens on Saturday, right? On Fight Pass?
That's right.
So definitely follow the Combat Docket Twitter account at Combat Docket. Ben will be there live tweeting from the events. Thursday we have PFL 7. And honestly, I'm going to say, this is the first PFL in the first 6 that doesn't have, too many blockbuster names on it. Not blockbuster, but, well-known names, I'll say. The main event is Shmuley Rama, former WSOF champ, taking on Jamie Abdallah. If you look down the card, Shunnell's in the co-main event, it looks like. Paul Bradley's on the card. Kyle Magalesh. Oh, fuck. Mike Pyle's on the card. Man, Mike Pyle is a interesting cat. Jason Butcher. Omar Nurmagomedov. I'm sure that's one of fucking Khabib's 19,000 cousins he has.
Yeah, look at those 2 fights. I'm going to see if I can say these names right. Omar Nurmagomedov is fighting Sadio Kub Kakaramanov. And then right before that, Ramazan Kuramagomedov is fighting Robert Hale. So the Magomeds are out in force.
Yeah. And then opening up the card, it looks like Jason High's fighting Johnny Case. Those are 2 UFC vets. Poor Jason High, man. That guy said some rough goes about it, but fighting Johnny Case, UFC vet. But again, I love that Thursday night MMA, so I'll definitely be tuning into PFL. All right, let's talk some odds and ends. Some fights have been announced. Some beefs that have been on. Let's start with the beef between Bruce and Nate Diaz. What do you make of this?
We should fill people in. I should see if I can find the exact quote. But essentially, Bruce Buffer, a little out of his lane, basically said that he didn't basically say. He literally said that Nate Diaz should stop complaining and bow to Dana White. Let's see if I can find this exact quote. Here it is. Nate, I heard you made $7 or more million in your last fight. I don't want to hear you complaining about being underpromoted by the UFC. You should be thanking the UFC and bowing to Dana White every time you see him. That's just fucking whatever. And then Nate finally clapped back and was like, I don't fucking bow to anybody. Well, let's see. Nate Diaz then responded in a tweet. Bruce Buffer, what the fuck? Get off the UFC nuts. You're bowing down right now telling me to bow down? Fuck that. You keep bowing down. I bow down to no one ever for all the money in the world. Which our guy Brandon at Combat Docket is a big time Diaz hater. And even he had to give some credit to Nate Diaz for being in the right here, because quite honestly, fuck Bruce Buffer. I've had the pleasure of reading Bruce Buffer's memoir, biography, whatever you want to call it, and he is the level of deranged he is in terms of how important he thinks he is off the charts. He thinks he's giving fighters life-changing advice, and he tells a story about where I can't remember who it was, Chuck Liddell and a bunch of other UFC fighters were about to get into a bar fight, but then Bruce stepped in and just saved the day and calmed everybody down because he's so imposing. And it's just get over yourself, Bruce Buffer. You're not, this is not how you make your money. And for him, and he's just he is totally all about the UFC is just the best. He thinks Dana White is just the most respectable, just genius businessman who's just bringing so much respect to the martial arts and all this shit. And it's what are you talking about, dude? I don't always agree with the Diaz brothers, but I'm with Nate Diaz here.
Yeah, man. I agree, man. I definitely think Bruce was a little bit out of line here, especially going after a guy like Diaz. I mean, Diaz is going to fire back at you. He doesn't give a fuck about the UFC. He doesn't give a fuck about the hierarchy. He lives to bust on them. I mean, I've never read his it was his autobiography.
Do not recommend
or anything.
Do not recommend.
No, I'm definitely not going to be at Barnes and Noble looking to pick that up anytime soon. But yeah, I agree with you, man. And again, I'm ride or die with the Diaz brothers. Nate's definitely not bowing down to anyone, especially Dana White in the UFC. And then didn't Bruce kind of like rescinded a little bit and put out another comment, didn't he? Like saying, "Oh, that's not
Yeah,
what I meant." Blah 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 blah.
he said, I meant like you should bow like you bow to somebody when you greet them. And it's like, what? You meant that you think he should physically bow? I don't know, man. That was outrageous. But yeah, my final word is I'll say fuck Bruce Buffer again. I hope he listens to this. I don't think he ever will. But you know how I feel now, Bruce. Yeah. I'll make sure I write that in the episode description this week. But on to brighter pastures, big fight announcements. Couple ones. Anthony Pettis is fighting Tony Ferguson, which is, I feel like, I mean, we'll talk about it a little bit here, but, I kind of feel like Tony Ferguson got skipped over a little bit. Like people forgot that he won a title of sorts. Also, Holloway Ortega scheduled for UFC 231. So hopefully that'll happen this time.
So yeah, I mean, there's a lot to say about both of these. I feel like Pettis Ferguson kind of came out of left field. Yeah, I did not expect Pettis as a possible opponent for Ferguson. Yeah, we talked about it a lot in the last couple weeks. Ferguson was kind of like the guy that won the interim title, that was the guy, and then kind of got skipped over. Poirier asserted himself like into the forefront. Nate's coming back. We got Conor Khabib, and then there was Tony, who was the interim champ. They got stripped. That everybody kind of forgot about. And now he's fighting Anthony Pettis, who Pettis was the guy, like the dude. And then he went on this downslide, and then he won his last fight and kind of looked like the old Pettis. Ferguson's coming off a serious injury. Pettis looked really good in his last fight. This is an interesting one, honestly. Pettis does really, Pettis struggles against really pressuring fighters. And as slick as Ferguson's striking is, he's not a big pressure guy, honestly. It's a tough one for Ferguson. It's a dangerous fight to take, and a big opportunity for Pettis to get himself kind of back into that, that title picture. I mean, Pettis is still a young dude. He's still got the skills there.
Yeah, and I think this is a great fight for Anthony Pettis. Kind of what you brought up is he has a ton to gain. Ferguson has quite a bit to lose. Because Tony Ferguson was an interim champion, right? Whatever, make what you will of that. But he beat Kevin Lee to win that title. Whereas Khabib, who maybe is the better fighter, I don't know, but Khabib beat fucking Al Iaquinta to win his title. So it's a little fucking weird that Ferguson gets a little bit of a, I don't know, it feels like a step down in competition perhaps, but yeah, big fight for Pettis. And I agree with you that Pettis tends to struggle with pressure fighters, but Ferguson is really just kind of a super high output fighter. He's not so much of a pressure fighter. And what I really hope is this fight hits the mat. I would love to see kind of the grappling exchanges between Pettis and Ferguson on the mat. Because I think, if you remember, Kevin Lee really kind of did work to Tony Ferguson on the mat in the first round of their fight. And Pettis is a super dangerous grappler. So I think it's a great fight. I'm excited to see how it goes down. I think Ferguson will be favored pretty heavily, but who knows? Pettis is always dangerous.
Yeah, I agree, man. Yeah, definitely if it hits the mat, it's going to be a really, really fun fight. And even striking, I mean, again, Ferguson's not really like a big pressure fighter, which Pettis really struggles against. I mean, if Ferguson gives Pettis the openings to really open up with striking and doesn't put a lot of pressure on him, it's going to be a fun one, man. All right, yeah, so that's just about it. I mean, we're going to talk about a little bit more about Ferguson Pettis leading up to that card. I mean, you got to think too that that's going to be like the I guess the contingency plan, like the backup plan for Connor and Khabib. Real quick though, could you imagine like like if it panned out to where it was like Connor versus Pettis headlining UFC 229? I mean, I don't even think they would go through with that, but man, that would be a disaster. I mean, it's got to be Ferguson. Ferguson's got the beef with both of them. That would be jumping in, but I think it would be a disaster either way. Hopefully we get both of these fights. As you alluded to before, Max Holloway, Brian Ortega, it looks like it's going to happen at UFC, was it 231? 231. I mean, first and foremost, you got to hope Max Holloway, his health is okay. I mean, he's had a rough go about it this year, health-wise, not fight-wise. Got to hope he's okay. I hope he can get to this fight okay, because this is one of the best fights in MMA, period. I can't wait for this one. I just hope it goes through. Ortega's on a roll. Holloway's on a roll. We talked about it leading up to their last encounter that fell through. These are just two guys that are at the top of their game, at the top of the division, that are on a collision course. And it feels like you don't get this that often in MMA. Or you do, but like this one really feels big. Like it feels like these guys are both at the pinnacle right now, colliding. So again, I hope Max gets there healthily, and I hope we get to see this happen.
Yeah, agreed. Knock on wood, man. And we'll talk about it leading up, but 100% agree that these are two guys at the pinnacle, and they're two of like the new generation of guys. So I'm so excited for that fight. I hope it happens. I cannot wait to talk about it, break it down, and hopefully watch it.
Yeah, I mean, they're both, 26, 27? Yeah, absolutely, man. I can't wait.
That's
did we miss anything
That's
this
all
week?
the major news.
What else is going on? I think so, man. Hey, by the way, I know you're a grappling fan, Ben. Did you see Wagner Rocha's his last two submissions from Kasai Grappling and actually XFN last night that was on Flow Combat?
I saw the like, I don't even know what you would call it, from XFN, where he had both guys. He had the guy's arms trapped and just fucking cupped it, put it like Big Brother, put his hand over his nose and mouth.
The smother choke. Yeah, he finished the guy last night in XFN with a smother choke. And then last week at Kasai Grappling, he finished MMA veteran Marcin Held with like a mercy wrist lock. Dude, they interlocked fingers. Wagner grabbed the back of his head with his left hand and literally just mercy locked him. Got a submission. I mean, Wagner Rocha, former UFC vet, is one of the scariest, most badass grapplers out there. I mean, that guy tiptoes the line of what's right and what is wrong, what's legal and what's not legal. And goddamn, I love watching him fight.
The smother is kind of incredible.
Yeah, it's so bad. Got to be so miserable for the opponent. So that was definitely one to watch. But yeah, man, I got nothing else. Again, check the Combat Docket calendar. Sync it to your phones. Follow everything going on in the MMA world. We got PFL coming up this Thursday. Ben will be at Invicta this coming Saturday. Next weekend we have was it next weekend, I believe, right? UFC 228. So we'll be back next week to break that down. Enjoy the fights this weekend, and we'll talk to you all soon.